Well, good Tuesday morning, friends and family, as we continue our daily thoughts and from the book of Psalms. Today I want to go to the 88th Psalm, and I want to share with you some thoughts, preliminary thoughts about the Psalm today, and then tomorrow we will see the answer to handling life's load, as I have titled this lesson. As I read this particular Psalm out of the 150 of the Psalms that are in the book, to me, this, without a doubt, is the saddest of all of the Psalms that we read. The very words of this Psalm can be very heartbreaking. To me, it paints a picture of a man who's ready to give up on life. He's ready to tell himself life is not worth continuing to live. In verse 15, you'll notice he says, "I have been afflicted and ready to die from my youth up." Here it is, verse 15 may be the key verse to the whole chapter. But the root of the problem stems from his youth. None of us know for sure exactly what is going on in the psalmist's mind in this passage, or what it is that is afflicting him. Some have suggested it is leprosy, but we don't really know. Whatever the affliction is, it really doesn't matter. He sees this as a chastisement from the Lord as he lives his life. In verse 7 and in verse 16. This may or may not have been the case, but it is not uncommon for God to afflict those who sinned with this great burden of leprosy. For every sin we commit, we realize there's a consequence. That's what the psalmist is trying to get us to understand. 3 occasions of this suffering are mentioned where they are afflicted with disobedience, with leprosy due to their disobedience in Scripture. We read about King Uzziah all the way back in 2 Chronicles chapter 26. He was struck with leprosy for sinning against the sanctuary of the Lord. And then we think about Elisha's servant Gehazi for sinning against God's plan for salvation in 2 Kings chapter 5. And then Moses' sister Miriam was stricken with leprosy for sinning against God's servant in the book of Numbers chapter 12. What I want to do this morning is draw our attention to this man and his problems as we can relate to them today. I want to say that he is very defeated. He's very discouraged. He's very depressed as I read through this psalm. And I want you to notice this morning how this man views his life. Number one, he believes that he has no future. When you look at verse 3 and verse 4 of this psalm, where it says, "My soul is full of troubles, and my life draws near to the grave. I am counted with those who go down to the pit. I am like a man who has no strength." He's comparing himself to all of the others who are not children of God, going down into the pit of despair and of sorrow. He doesn't believe that he has any type of future in his life. But you continue on. Number 2, he believes that he has no friends. Look at verse 8. It says, "You have put away my acquaintances far from me. You have made me an abomination to them." Here it is, this young man, as he's writing here, he's telling us when he says he has no friends, he's really saying, I'm lonely. And let us understand that loneliness can be a killer. Loneliness is that which we see frequently. For example, a spouse loses a spouse that they had been married to for many, many, many years. And within a few months or maybe even a year, the other spouse passes away. I've seen this happen before, and a lot of times we say they died of a lonely heart. They were alone. There was no one there to go with them about what they were used to doing. And so here we see this individual saying that he has no friends, or believing that he has no friends. The story is told, and as I've read, over in Japan, there's a strange company that has been formed where you can rent a family for special occasions so that you won't be lonely on your birthday or other holidays that fall throughout the year. But you and I as Christians, we need to understand we are never alone. God is always with us. It is our own fault when we feel that we have no friends. It is our own fault when we feel that the world has deserted us. But God is always there. He's always willing to help and to encourage and to uplift us. But number 3, when I read verses 8 through verse 12, I see a man that believes that he has no foundation. As I read these verses, it reads to me that he feels he has no hope. He has nothing that he can grasp onto, to hold on to. He feels that even all of his reaching out to the Lord has been in vain. As you begin reading there in verse 9, he says, my eyes waste away because of my affliction. Lord, I have called daily upon you. I have stretched out my hands to you. Will you work wonders? The implication is that he's saying that God has not done anything for him, that God has deserted him, and therefore, since God has deserted him, his foundation has been shaken. But really, we need again understand, God is always there. The shakiness of our foundation comes because of our lack of faith. But then you go to verse 13 and you read down through the end of the chapter. Here's a man that believes he has no faith. In verse 13, he says, but to you I have cried out, O Lord, and in the morning my prayer comes before you. He has no expectation of God answering his prayers. He has no expectation of God hearing his call. But then you continue on in verse 14. He says, Lord, why do you cast off my soul? Why do you hide your face from me? He has no explanation for his problems. He seems to me to be laying all the blame at the feet of God, the one who cares and comforts for us. You see, his life has been this way for many years, and he sees no end to the misery that he's going through in sight. He feels that he is condemned to struggle under this heavy load until finally he dies. So I ask you this morning, in light of all that's going on in our world today, have we ever been in a position that the psalmist is writing of? Have we ever felt we have no future, or that we have no friends, or that life has no foundation, or that there is no faith within us? You see, perhaps we're aware of someone who is there. Maybe it's you that's fallen into the depths of despair. But I want to encourage you, that's not really the message of this psalm. You see, I want to offer tomorrow some challenges to you of the hurting saint, the one who can comfort you and that you can turn to. I see reasons for hope, and I'll share those with you tomorrow. You see, what we want to speak about is handling life's load. Let us understand, the bottom line is that we cannot go through life unaided. We cannot go through life when we try to handle the loads ourselves. And as I read this psalm, it seems to me that the psalmist in his writings is trying to say, I'm trying to handle my problems. And he cries out to a God who is there to help him. I hope God blesses you today. Be a light to someone who is in darkness. Be an encourager of those who are downtrodden. The Lord loves you. I love you. And Jesus died for you.